Guys, in this video we are going to be repairing a Danfoss VLT drive. The issue with this drive is that the drive itself will not power up. There is no power coming to the drive itself from the bypass. Our problem is that we have a failure within the bypass. I'm going to go ahead and remove this cover. It is already loose. Now when you get to this stage, make sure that you lock and tag out the source of power for this drive, which I have already done. Now the issue is the power supply board right here has failed. Now if you talk to the folks at Danfoss, their tech support center, one thing you'll note is they'll tell you if you pop any of the fuses that are on this power supply board, the board is dead. Okay, just replace it. The problem is if you do not make the repair on the component that caused the board to fail, then all you're going to do is burn up another board. So one of the criticisms that I have about Danfoss VFDs, the newer ones, the bypasses in particular, where I need to get to is behind all of this. Okay, there's a contactor back here, CR1, that I've got to get to. Okay, that is what is driven off of the power supply. There's a control relay and things like that that is all driven off of the power supply. Here is the control board for the bypass and things like that. But in order to get to that main contactor, I have to pull all of this out. Okay, that is a criticism that I have against Danfoss. I think that it is bad practice to do that. Okay, you cannot easily troubleshoot the potential cause. I suspect that we could have a bad contactor. I do not know. You know, there again, it's kind of hard to get some of the information on these drives. You know, I've tried to call their tech support. I did not get a schematic of this bypass. What they sent me was basically a wiring schematic of the overall drive. So to begin with, what we're going to do is just start tearing it apart. We're going to make sure that our voltage is dead, which I already know. I've already got power turned off, but we're going to verify that, and then I'm going to begin the process of taking this apart. To remove the power supply, you have got three nuts. You've got this one, and then you've got two back here, and you also have one plug and then the three wires that connect to the power supply. So we're going to begin by removing the power supply. After removing the three nuts that hold the power supply housing in, all I need to do is remove this plug and these three cables. Now the wiring for this particular drive is labeled. You know, we have one L3, L2, and of course that's another label that is on this, but we have an indication of where they go on the board. So I'm just going to unplug this and move it out of the way. Once you get this unplugged, you literally have 4 screws on the power supply board that hold it to the board. Make sure you don't lose this insulating paper. There's some standoffs behind this, so you know, make sure that you get all that back in place. Right now we're just going to move this out of the way, unplug it, move it out of the way, and get ready to continue pulling this apart. Okay guys, I've got all the screws removed from this panel, and it has allowed it to drop down. Of course these studs are still kind of holding it in place. I should be able to now lift this out of the way and have access to the main contactors. Guys, I have got the front of this pulled loose enough to where I have access to CR1. This is one of the things that tech support said could be the problem, so we are going to replace it. That is one of the parts that I did order. Again guys, they're the way that Danfoss has these set up, this is absolutely ridiculous. That is a criticism that I have of them. Taking this apart like this is unnecessary. Okay, the old Danfoss, the VLT 6000s, the bypasses that were on them, you could actually get in and do some actual troubleshooting. Unlike this, the way that it is, I currently could not get in there and actually test the coil, so I'm basically just having to throw parts at it. Right now I've got these cables removed. I'm going to remove the ones over here and of course the 4 screws, and then pull the contactor out. From what one of the techs told me that works on these things regularly, there is a pin in here that breaks and has a tendency to not allow this to work properly, and that's one of the reasons why I'm replacing this. You know, of course, there's 2 screws here to remove these auxiliary contacts. I'm just going to leave the wiring in place on this, remove these 2 screws, and remove the auxiliary contacts. I've got this unbolted from the panel, that I just have the coil wires, and yes, I know it's just dangling, but it's not going anywhere right now. We're going to get this removed, we're going to get the coil wires removed, and get this contactor pulled out of the way. Now that I have this out, I do believe that this contactor may be a big part of my problem, because it is locked up. That coil will not move, and that kind of goes along with what one of the guys said, that there's something inside this that has a tendency to break, and they will lock up, and that is exactly what it appears to have happened with this coil. Of course, now we're going to begin the process of installing the new components and just keep moving forward. I now have the new contactor installed, and there is a big difference. I mean, that other one is obviously locked up. This one moves freely, so I think that it is a good suspect. But unfortunately, the way that this system is, I really didn't have a way of troubleshooting it without just taking everything apart. So that's a big negative, Danfoss. You guys can do better if any of you guys are watching this video. Now, I wanted you to also remember, the one thing you want to do is, even though this is supposed to be a direct replacement, always double check your coil voltage. This is 110 volt coil, just like the one that came out. Just wanted to mention that. You always want to make sure, just in case you do get the wrong part. That way it'll save you a little bit of aggravation. But now we have this contactor put back in place, we have the auxiliaries put back in, and we are ready to continue. And while we're here, I'm going to go ahead and replace the bypass control board. This is basic plug and play, 2 studs, you got 2 nuts, and this whole thing comes off. Then you've got 4 screws that hold the board onto the back panel. Just now we're going to unplug it and swap it out as well. We now have everything reassembled. We have all the parts, connections made, or tightened, double checked, and we are ready to put the cover on and actually test this drive. Again, I will state that I think that having to remove all of this just to get to a contactor is unnecessary. There's better ways that this could have been done. But anyways, guys, that is just one of my thoughts on the Danfoss VFD. That will hopefully give you guys a little bit of an understanding about what you need to do to get in here to make a repair. There again, guys, just because of the power supply failure, for whatever reason, obviously I do believe it was that contactor that was locked up, contributed to it. You know, it's obviously that could be an issue. Power supply, contactor, and the control board. We're ready to put the cover back on and test this drive. Guys, we have the VFD put back together, and as you can tell, we are currently coming up. This air handler is a very large air handler, so it is coming up very slowly. The speed limit for this is one that you do not want to let go very fast. I did want to point something out that I ran into when I first powered this up and tried to get it going. I was getting an interlock alarm 460, and the problem was this little jumper right here on the board that I replaced in the bypass control board. Okay, if this is not in the correct system, in the correct position, it will give you that alarm. I did call their tech support, talked to the guy for a minute, and we done a couple of checks. You know, he was thinking possibly overloads as well as some of the other auxiliaries. But you know, there again, we cannot get to those contacts, those auxiliaries on the big contactors in here with the everything in place. You know, again, Danfoss guys, you can do better than that. But fortunately, it was something very simple. When I flipped the switch to the correct position, powered it back up, and we are now coming back into service. But guys, this is just a quick video that I wanted to do to give you an overview of some of the steps involved in making a repair to a Danfoss VLT HVAC drive. Leave me any questions down below. Also be sure to give the video a thumbs up. Thanks for watching. Check out the links down in the description. There's some affiliate links to some of the tools that I use and things like that. That way you guys, if you want to help out the channel, getting stuff through there will help. But anyways guys, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.